Hello, it's Catherine here. Today I'm going to talk to you about houses in Britain. In the UK, unlike Spain, most people live in houses rather than flats. First, I'm going to talk to you about the type of houses people live in. In most cities and industrial parts of the country, it is very common to see what we call terraced houses, like you can see in the picture. A terraced house is a house which is attached to the other houses on each side in a long line. Traditionally, these were built by rich mill owners who wanted their workers to live close by. So when we look in the photograph, you can see perhaps 10 or 12 houses all connected to each other. Terraced houses can have very different styles depending on the area and whereabouts they are in the country. But the idea is that on the same street they all look very similar. Here you can see three very different examples of terraced houses from across the UK. Typically, terrace houses don't have a driveway or a garage. Some may have a garden, and it is very typical for them to have a backyard. Here you can see the backyards of two sets of terraced houses, and in the middle of the photograph there is a small walkway between the backyards on the left and on the right. Here you can see a semi-detached house, another very typical type of house in the UK. In a semi-detached house, you're attached to just one neighbour on just one side of your house. Again, semi-detached houses can look very different in different areas. Often, semi-detached houses have a driveway and possibly a garage. It is also more likely that they have a garden. Here is an image of a detached house. This means that none of the walls of the house are attached to another house. The distance between the houses can be big or only very small, but the important thing is that the houses are not attached in any way. Detached houses typically are a little larger, but again that can vary depending on the area and how the houses have been built. In this slide, you can see the three types of houses we've mentioned: the terraced house on the top left, the detached house on the top right, and below the semi-detached house. These three terms are terms which we also use to describe other types of houses to add extra detail. As you can see in all three of the pictures, it is also very common for houses in England to have a sloped roof rather than a flat roof, which we often see in Spain. It is very unusual for houses to have a terrace on the top, which again we often see in Spain. And not many houses have balconies. So, a bungalow is a different type of house. Again, we may have a detached or semi-detached or even terrace bungalows, but they are usually either detached or semi-detached. The important feature of a bungalow is that it is a house with only one floor, meaning there are no stairs in a bungalow, And so it is very common for older people to live in bungalows so that they can move around easily and do not have to go up any stairs. For example, my grandma moved into a bungalow around 5 years ago because it was becoming too difficult for her to go up the stairs in her house. She loves her bungalow as she is able to move around easily and go into the garden. A cottage is another type of house we often see in the UK. These are usually in more rural areas, so you find many cottages in the countryside. Cottages are often very old houses, and the rooms are usually much smaller than in modern houses. They are often made of stone rather than brick, and it is common to see large wooden features in a cottage. Some cottages are so old that they are protected, and you are not able to change many things about the house. Cottages usually only have small windows, and some, like the ones you can see in the picture, have a special type of roof. The cottages that you can see here are called thatch cottages, and this means that the roof is not made from slates like most modern houses, but it is still built in the traditional way, using straw and twigs. These types of houses look very beautiful, but it can be difficult and expensive to live in these type of thatch cottages, as the roof only lasts a few years before it is damaged by the weather or by birds, so it needs to be repaired frequently. Flats or apartment blocks are definitely not as common as in Spain, but we still have them. Usually they are in large cities, and many started to be built from the 1960s onwards, when cities were expanding rapidly and needed more accommodation. Now we see many flats and apartment blocks in desirable areas like Manchester and London, and are often very expensive. Unlike in Spain, it is unusual for us to live in a complex with a shared garden or a swimming pool. It's not impossible, but it's not something that is common to see. So, finally, over to you. What do you think about the types of houses in Britain? Can you remember all the names of them? Think about it. Which one would you most like to live in, and why?